mystery interstellar object that was spotted by astronomers last week. It could be the oldest comet ever seen. It's only the third time that we've actually detected an object that has come from beyond our solar system.
The image appeared first as a faint smear of light against the rusty Martian horizon, a blur that the onboard systems of NASA's Perseverance rover almost dismissed as a camera glitch. But when the automated imaging protocols enhanced and recalibrated the feed, the blur resolved into something entirely unanticipated, a long, irregularly shaped object streaked with metallic reflection, hovering far beyond the thin Martian atmosphere, yet close enough for the rover's long-range optics to capture. It was 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever recorded passing through our solar system, and this time, humanity had a camera on another world pointed directly at it. For the first time, Mars, not Earth, was the vantage point for witnessing something born from the stars. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The significance of that single image was beyond description. The moment the data packet arrived at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, the transmission log spiked with alerts. Technicians stopped what they were doing, and scientists poured into the control room as the compressed images expanded into full-resolution clarity. The object was unmistakably not a comet in the traditional sense. Its surface gleamed not with ice or dust, but with a texture that hinted at complex layering, striations, and panel-like contours, arranged in patterns that seemed geometric, almost deliberate. The reddish light from Mars gave it an eerie tone, but even accounting for color distortion, the shape was unnerving. 3I Atlas had already been tracked passing between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars, its trajectory confirming it had come from beyond the heliosphere. The Mars rover's optical sensors, meant for geology and mineral study, were never designed for deep space astrophotography, yet the clarity of the capture was stunning. The object's profile revealed parallel ridges and an apparent symmetry that suggested neither randomness nor erosion. It appeared intact, solid, and constructed, though that word would soon become taboo within NASA halls. Scientists rushed to cross-reference the data with every known interstellar catalog. 1I/Oumuamua and 2I/Borisov had both passed through the inner solar system years earlier, and though mysterious, both were tentatively categorized as natural bodies. One possibly a fragment of a long-dead planet, the other a comet. But this was different. The light curve was consistent, not fluctuating like tumbling rock. Its reflective surface did not behave like ice sublimating in sunlight. And strangest of all, it emitted faint electromagnetic signatures that did not align with solar-wind interactions. When the public feed of the rover's imagery was delayed without explanation, speculation erupted. Insiders whispered that NASA had flagged the transmission for internal review. The official explanation, unusual sensor noise during long-range imaging, did not hold up once independent astrophysicists correlated the sighting with orbital data. The timing matched perfectly with the expected flyby of 3I Atlas. In an age where every amateur telescope could track interstellar visitors, NASA's silence was telling. Within mission control, the emotional spectrum shifted between awe and unease. Many scientists were thrilled by the scientific implications. Others, however, were shaken by what the data might mean. The geometric alignment visible along the object's spine wasn't random. The spacing between each reflective band appeared to follow a mathematical ratio, one eerily similar to the Fibonacci sequence. When pattern recognition algorithms compared the image with known geological formations, the confidence level of a natural origin dropped below 10%. One researcher reviewing the spectral analysis simply muttered that it looked engineered. The Mars vantage point introduced another layer of intrigue. On Earth, atmospheric interference and distance limit resolution. But from the Martian surface, 3I Atlas was seen through an almost transparent atmosphere, and the angle of solar reflection was perfect. The rover's Mastcam Z system captured faint glints of light traveling across its length, as though internal mechanisms or reflective components were present. No one wanted to use the word lights, yet the description was unavoidable. Astrobiologists debated through the night. Could this object be a probe, sent long before human civilization rose? The concept of interstellar artifacts had always been theoretical, a speculation buried in scientific papers under terms like technosignatures and non-gravitational acceleration. But now, on Mars, a robot's camera might have glimpsed one firsthand. The thought sent a ripple of fear through even the most rational minds. The following days were a blur of analysis. The rover, pre-programmed with limited energy reserves, couldn't adjust its position for another capture without diverting power from other experiments. The operations team voted to do it anyway. For a brief 6-minute window, Perseverance adjusted its high-gain antenna and aimed the camera once more. The second image came through distorted but clearer in one terrifying respect. The object had moved. Its orientation had changed subtly, rotating around an axis inconsistent with gravitational drift. The discovery sent shockwaves through the global scientific community. Even within NASA, teams splintered into camps. One side argued for natural explanations. Perhaps 3Y Atlas was composed of exotic material reacting unpredictably to solar radiation. The opposing camp, smaller but louder, whispered that they might be witnessing something far beyond the boundaries of human understanding, an artifact from a civilization predating us by millennia or even eons. Computational simulations showed that its deceleration as it approached the inner solar system didn't match a simple hyperbolic trajectory. Something had altered its speed, just slightly, but enough to raise eyebrows. If it had been influenced by solar radiation pressure, the pattern of motion should have been chaotic. Instead, it was precise. Some even suspected active course correction. The raw emotional reaction among scientists wasn't excitement, but dread. If this was artificial, the implications were staggering. That would mean we were not the first explorers of this system. It would mean that Mars, now host to humanity's most advanced robotic emissaries, had become the silent witness to a relic from the stars. And if 3I Atlas was functioning, if it was scanning, transmitting, or observing, then we had already been noticed. The electromagnetic data reinforced the unease. Signals captured from orbiters around Mars recorded a faint oscillation, a repeating pulse between 1420 and 1430 megahertz near the hydrogen line, a frequency long theorized to be ideal for interstellar communication. It wasn't strong enough to decode, but it was structured, repeating at intervals that defied random origin. Engineers checked and rechecked for interference. Nothing local could explain it. For the first time in decades, a few within NASA privately invoked the word contact. The realization forced a cascade of philosophical questions. If this object was truly non-natural, what was its purpose? Was it a derelict craft, a probe, or something even more profound, a seed of exploration left adrift between stars? The structure's reflective layers seemed too eroded to be recent, suggesting extreme age. Yet its stability and symmetry implied resilience, as though built to endure the emptiness of interstellar travel indefinitely. One image analyst noted an unusual hexagonal indentation on its surface, reminiscent of a docking mechanism or sensor port. When enhanced, the pattern bore faint scoring along its edges, like the residue of controlled manufacturing. The mind resisted the implications. If the universe had seeded such objects, silently crossing the gulfs between worlds, then perhaps interstellar civilizations had been aware of each other long before Earth species learned to speak. From Mars, Perseverance could only watch. Its instruments lacked the propulsion or proximity to pursue, but the mere sight of 3I Atlas reframed the mission's entire purpose. Mars was no longer just a testing ground for future human settlement. It had become a cosmic observatory, a lonely outpost that had glimpsed evidence of something vast. The haunting stillness of the Martian desert seemed to mirror the collective shock of the scientists on Earth. In the quiet hours after the discovery, astrophysicists pored over the telemetry again and again, hoping for a mistake. But the readings were consistent. The light curve data, the spectral analysis, the motion vectors. All of it pointed toward one conclusion they were reluctant to speak aloud. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it was not behaving like a comet, asteroid, or fragment of planetary debris. It was something else. Something crafted. The silence from NASA's Public Affairs Office became deafening. Leaks began to surface anonymously, each one amplifying the mystery. Some claimed the object emitted directed radio beams. Others suggested it carried an artificial magnetic field. While most of these rumors were exaggerated, the kernel of truth remained. The images taken from Mars were unlike anything previously captured. The event carried implications far beyond astronomy. Philosophers, theologians, and cultural theorists began discussing what this meant for human identity. If an ancient intelligence had traversed the same cosmic sea, what did that say about humanity's place in the universe? The psychological weight of such a realization would be immense. Our species had always imagined discovering life on another planet through microorganisms or atmospheric chemistry, not through a silent, drifting relic photographed by a robotic scout on a foreign world. The image itself became an icon within NASA's internal circles. The irregular, blade-like silhouette of 3Y Atlas glinting against the Martian dusk looked almost artistic, hauntingly beautiful yet deeply unsettling. Scientists stared at it as if it were a message in an alien language, a shape that defied categorization, whispering of technologies that operated on principles still unknown. Further analysis revealed spectral absorption bands that didn't correspond to any known element or mineral. The data suggested composite materials with molecular alignment impossible through natural formation. This wasn't just a curiosity, it hinted at an engineering sophistication that transcended anything humanity could yet replicate. It seemed both alien and ancient, designed not for beauty but for endurance, as though its makers anticipated millennia of silence. When the second image confirmed its slow rotation, panic set in among the mission specialists. The motion couldn't be explained by tidal forces or outgassing. It was controlled, deliberate. The possibility that it was active shattered the last defenses of skepticism. Yet fear restrained any proclamation. Humanity wasn't ready for the implications of acknowledging such an artifact. Theoretical physicists began modeling its potential propulsion methods. Some hypothesized it used radiation sails powered by starlight, while others proposed exotic matter reactions capable of self-correction. The structure's reflective geometry supported these ideas. If true, 3I Atlas wasn't just a remnant, it was a functioning probe, a survivor of interstellar spaceflight, drifting silently from one system to the next. From Mars's thin atmosphere, the distant glimmer of the object became a reminder of cosmic vulnerability. The planet, barren and lifeless, now served as witness to something that bridged the gap between myth and reality. Scientists on Earth, staring at the data feeds, began to realize the universe was far more populated with secrets than previously imagined. The broader implications were staggering. If interstellar objects like 3I Atlas were artificial, then they could be common, scattered remnants of civilizations exploring or monitoring across light years. Earth's previous sightings of Oumuamua and Borisov might not have been coincidences, but part of a larger pattern. The solar system could be traversed periodically by emissaries or machines older than humanity itself. At the core of every scientist's fear was a simple, unspoken question: what if it wasn't derelict? If it had changed orientation deliberately, perhaps in response to observation, then it was aware. And if it was aware, then it was watching. The notion that something had noticed Mars's robotic gaze chilled even the most rational minds. The engineers reviewing Perseverance's telemetry noticed a brief spike in static interference during the second image capture, an unexplained burst lasting less than 2 seconds. Some dismissed it as solar noise, but others were not so sure. The interference pattern matched the same frequency range as the hydrogen line oscillation. It was as if 3I Atlas had responded. Deep space observatories attempted to reacquire the object as it moved outward, but by the time Earth-based telescopes realigned, it was already fading beyond reach, gliding silently toward the outer system. Yet the Mars images remained, high resolution, undeniable, forever etching into history the first detailed glimpse of an interstellar visitor seen from another planet. In laboratories across the world, scientists began dissecting every pixel, the texture, the reflectivity, the minute variations of shadow and light. All were scrutinized in obsessive detail. AI-assisted analysis reconstructed a partial 3D model, revealing internal cavities that seemed too symmetrical to be random voids. One cavity, in particular, formed a perfect equilateral triangle, embedded near what could be interpreted as a core. The structure seemed built with intention. NASA's upper leadership faced a crisis of communication. How could they present such a discovery without igniting hysteria or speculation about extraterrestrial technology? The term anomalous interstellar object became the official classification, deliberately vague, designed to obscure the magnitude of what they had found. Yet inside scientific circles, the mood was anything but calm. The image had shaken the very foundation of how humanity perceived its solitude in the cosmos. The questions multiplied faster than answers could form. Who built it? When? How did it survive the vast stretches of interstellar space? Was it part of a fleet? A network? A probe launched by a species that once surveyed the galaxy? The sheer possibilities were overwhelming. For those who had dedicated their lives to searching the stars, the image represented both triumph and terror. Triumph, because it confirmed that the cosmos held more than inert rock and gas. Terror, because it reminded humanity of how little control it truly had over its cosmic surroundings. The universe had just spoken in silence, through the cold lens of a Martian rover. Every detail of the event reinforced one haunting truth: discovery is not always comfort. The closer science peers into the unknown, the more it realizes how small and fragile human understanding remains. 3. Atlas had crossed billions of miles to drift briefly within our reach, and in doing so, it had altered the trajectory of human thought forever. As Mars's thin winds swept dust across Perseverance's metallic frame, the rover stood silent, its camera still facing the sky that had yielded such a revelation. Far beyond, in the deep cold of interplanetary space, the strange object receded, its metallic skin catching the sunlight one last time before fading into the black. Scientists stared at that fading speck and felt an emotion they rarely admitted to: fear, not of invasion or threat, but of realization, the realization that the universe had been watching long before we learned to look back. The Mars rover's image of 3I Atlas would become a touchstone of cosmic mystery, a testament to humanity's first true glimpse of the unknowable. It reminded the world that exploration carries consequences, that to gaze too far into the dark is to risk finding something staring back. The scientists were left speechless, not because they lacked explanations, but because they understood the weight of what they had seen. Something vast, ancient, and deliberate had crossed paths with a lonely machine on a distant world. And for the first time, humanity's search for knowledge had come face to face with the infinite. The discovery of 3Y Atlas through the eyes of the Mars rover had already stunned the scientific world. But the real storm began once deeper analysis commenced. While the original images captivated public imagination, the hidden layers of data embedded within the transmission revealed more than visuals could show. The cameras aboard Perseverance were equipped with multispectral imaging, capable of detecting wavelengths beyond visible light. When scientists decoded the near-infrared and ultraviolet data, an entirely new level of complexity appeared. The object was not uniform. Its outer shell exhibited alternating regions of high reflectivity and deep absorption, suggesting composite materials designed to manipulate light, perhaps even to conceal or regulate energy output. Each spectral band displayed rhythmic fluctuations as if 3I Atlas was pulsing, the pattern repeated every 19.4 seconds, a frequency too consistent to dismiss as noise. The pulses appeared across multiple wavelengths simultaneously, implying coherence, an organized source rather than random cosmic interference. When overlaid onto the light curve, the rhythm aligned with the object's rotation, creating a complex interplay of motion and energy emission that defied known natural mechanisms. This synchronization captivated the analysis teams. The data spoke of intent. Astrophysicists working at the Goddard Space Flight Center attempted to replicate the readings using simulations of tumbling asteroids with variable albedo surfaces. None produced anything resembling the rhythmic signature detected from 3I Atlas. Even with chaotic variables, natural reflection patterns never produced consistent intervals. The pattern was simply too stable. One senior researcher privately compared it to a beacon, though that word was carefully avoided in official channels. As analysis deepened, the international scientific community fractured between skepticism and awe. European Space Agency researchers insisted the object might be composed of crystalline metallic hydrogen formed under extreme pressures in an alien stellar nursery, explaining the peculiar reflections. Others argued such a structure would have dissipated long before reaching our solar system. The debate grew heated, not because of disagreement, but because the implications frightened everyone equally. If it wasn't natural, then something had made it. Meanwhile, Mars itself had become a silent spectator to an unfolding revelation. Every few hours, the rover's environmental sensors detected faint variations in the planet's magnetic field, deviations too subtle to trigger alarms but impossible to ignore. These fluctuations appeared synchronized with the pulses from 3I Atlas. Mars, an uninhabited desert, had suddenly become part of a vast, unseen network of energy exchanges, as though the alien object's emissions were resonating through the thin atmosphere. A small group of NASA radio engineers, working unofficially after hours, processed the raw data into audio frequencies. What emerged was a low harmonic vibration, a deep, almost musical hum that repeated in a precise cadence. It was haunting, the kind of sound that evoked the sensation of vast distances and incomprehensible age. When played through studio monitors, the room fell silent. No one could speak. The sound carried an eerie emotional quality, like the voice of an ancient machine whispering from the void. The possibility that 3I Atlas was transmitting or emitting structured data began to dominate discussions. Some proposed it might not be broadcasting, but listening, scanning the solar system for signals of intelligence. If so, then Mars, with its swarm of orbiters and robotic explorers, might have drawn its attention. The timing seemed almost too coincidental. The object's closest pass occurred just as the rover's cameras were directed toward it. The odds of such alignment by chance were astronomical. Mathematicians joined the effort, attempting to decode the rhythm of the pulses. The intervals between emissions followed ratios close to 1.618, the golden mean, a mathematical constant appearing throughout natural structures and human design. It was as if the universe itself spoke in patterns of harmony, and this object had encoded that principle into its very existence. Yet no one could determine whether that was symbolic or merely a byproduct of advanced engineering principles. At NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the atmosphere shifted from excitement to something more reverent. The researchers weren't just studying data. They were confronting something profoundly alien. Many reported dreams about the object, dreams of endless black space and an ancient craft drifting silently through eternity. These weren't the fantasies of amateurs. They were the subconscious echoes of scientists staring into the unknown too long. The rover's onboard AI recorded a final faint signal days after the last visual capture. It wasn't an image or light reading. It was a data anomaly, an uncommanded activation of its environmental monitor. The timestamp corresponded exactly to the moment 3Y Atlas passed beyond the line of sight. A subtle shift in ambient radiation occurred, measured as a symmetrical spike on both gamma and microwave frequencies. The symmetry was mathematically perfect. That kind of balance doesn't happen by accident. On Earth, the data analysis teams began to notice something deeply disturbing. The pulse intervals of the emissions from 3Y Atlas matched with uncanny precision the resonant frequencies of hydrogen molecules, the same frequency humanity uses in its search for extraterrestrial signals. The implication was impossible to ignore. Either the object operated on physical constants universally optimal for communication, or it had intentionally chosen a language written into the fabric of the cosmos itself. The discovery reached classified briefings within international space agencies. For decades, the idea of interstellar probes or Bracewell probes had been confined to speculative literature, theoretical machines designed to observe civilizations silently. Now, something matching those predictions had appeared, and from Mars's lonely surface came the first photographic proof. Researchers at Caltech attempted to reconstruct the object's potential trajectory beyond our solar system. Simulations suggested it had entered the heliosphere from a region near the constellation Lyra, the same region associated with earlier interstellar visitors. Its speed indicated it had decelerated slightly upon entry, again a sign inconsistent with passive drift. The models predicted it would exit toward the Oort cloud within 6 months, vanishing back into interstellar space. Whatever opportunity existed to study it directly would vanish forever. Plans were drawn up for a rapid response probe launch, using repurposed hardware from previous Mars relay missions. But timelines and physics refused to cooperate. By the time such a mission reached Mars orbit, the object would already be gone. Humanity could only watch as the cosmic enigma retreated into darkness, leaving behind only fragments of data and a haunting sense of incompleteness. Inside NASA's research centers, engineers began reverse engineering what little they could infer from the imagery. The hexagonal patterns, the surface striations, the reflective layering all became subjects of study. Advanced materials scientists speculated about nanostructured alloys that could self-repair or adapt to environmental conditions. The alternating reflective panels they proposed might serve as both propulsion and communication systems, converting starlight into motion through controlled radiation pressure. Theorists at MIT suggested a radical concept. What if 3I Atlas wasn't a vehicle, but a living construct? A synthesis of biological and mechanical elements capable of self-preservation and adaptation? The consistent electromagnetic emissions could represent not communication but metabolism, the energetic rhythm of a machine that was also alive. If that were true, then humanity hadn't just encountered alien technology. It had witnessed a form of existence beyond its comprehension. A fusion of life and mechanism evolved for the vacuum of interstellar space. Religious scholars and philosophers soon joined the discourse, drawn into the existential implications. For millennia, humanity had looked to the stars seeking meaning. Now the stars had responded, but not with words. Through a silent, ancient messenger whose motives were indecipherable. Was it an artifact of creation, or merely the work of a civilization so advanced that their machines outlasted their makers? The line between science and spirituality blurred as scientists spoke of the object in tones usually reserved for sacred relics. The public remained largely unaware of the depth of NASA's internal turmoil. The agency released a single sanitized statement acknowledging the detection of an unusual interstellar body and confirming ongoing analysis. No images were made public beyond the initial frame. Conspiracy theories exploded overnight. Amateur astronomers scoured the skies, desperate to capture a glimpse, but the object's trajectory made it impossible for Earth-based observation. The only eyes upon it were those of a lonely rover on a distant planet. Among scientists, the terror was not that the object might be hostile. It was that it might be indifferent. The notion that something could traverse the galaxy without caring who or what saw it struck a deep existential chord. Humanity's search for meaning collided with the cold, mechanical persistence of something far older. The possibility that civilizations across the universe might send such machines silently drifting through eternity, observing and moving on, forced humanity to confront the vast loneliness of existence. Psychologists working with the NASA team began documenting a new phenomenon: the Atlas effect. Researchers involved in the analysis experienced heightened existential anxiety, insomnia, and an overwhelming sense of insignificance. For the first time, science itself had induced something akin to cosmic dread. Looking at the image of 3I Atlas became an act of quiet horror. Attempts to decode the harmonic emissions continued. Linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers collaborated, seeking structure in the signal. They discovered patterns resembling prime number sequences embedded within amplitude modulations. Prime sequences, long theorized as universal indicators of intelligence, appeared not once but repeatedly, suggesting deliberate encoding. Yet beyond that, the message, if it was one, remained opaque. It was as though the object spoke a language based on physics itself, not symbols. The possibility that it was a listening probe gained traction. If 3I Atlas had sensors capable of detecting radio frequencies, its sudden orientation shift could have been a response to human emissions from Mars orbiters, Earth transmitters, or even the rover's own communication pulses. The terrifying implication was that it had noticed us noticing it. Scientists speculated that the probe might operate on principles of self-preservation, designed to catalog and avoid interaction with developing civilizations. If so, its departure after being photographed might not have been coincidence. It might have been retreat. Humanity, in its curiosity, might have accidentally triggered a response from a mechanism designed to remain unseen. Meanwhile, physicists revisited old data from the first interstellar object, Oumuamua. When cross-referenced, faint similarities emerged. The acceleration anomalies and lack of cometary tail mirrored the behavior of 3Y Atlas. The realization hit with quiet inevitability. This wasn't the first, and likely not the last. Humanity had been glimpsing fragments of a pattern long before it understood what it was looking at. The Mars image thus became more than just a snapshot. It was the Rosetta Stone of interstellar archaeology. The faint etchings on its surface, when enhanced using high-contrast imaging, appeared to form micro-patterns, repeated angular motifs consistent across multiple panels. These were not decorative. Their arrangement followed non-random distribution, suggesting a coding mechanism embedded in geometry itself. Some proposed that the patterns represented a form of storage, information etched into structure, perhaps containing the history or purpose of the object. Quantum theorists speculated about data transmission through entangled particles, proposing that 3I Atlas might not even need conventional communication. If its creators mastered quantum information networks, it could be simultaneously connected to counterparts across the galaxy, transmitting knowledge instantaneously. In that context, the Mars sighting wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a system so vast it transcended space and time as humanity understood them. At the same time, engineers studying the Mars Rover data began to suspect that 3Y Atlas emitted low-level gravimetric distortions. These faint anomalies in the rover's instrumentation aligned with slight changes in the Martian dust suspension, as if the planet's surface subtly reacted to the object's passing influence. Though minuscule, the effect was measurable. That realization startled physicists. It meant the object interacted with gravity in ways that defied known physics, possibly utilizing it as a method of propulsion. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us. What are your thoughts on NASA's Mars rover discovering 3I Atlas? What do you expect next? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.